The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Life with Open Pages Publishing. We all have a purpose in life. Sometimes we just need a little motivation to point us in the right direction. This show is designed to help you create the life you were meant to live. I'm your host, Michelle Spikanis. My goal is to motivate you to make simple life changes so you can experience a life with meaning, direction, love, and peace. Now let's start the show. Hi, this is Michelle. Welcome to another episode of Life with Open Pages. Tonight we're going to talk about how to go from crisis to calm in less than 30 seconds. Now, even in the best of times, living with anxiety is just a way of life for a lot of people. How can someone go from a highly anxious state to one of peace of mind in just seconds? My guest, Reiki Master and energy work expert, Rhonda Harris-Choudhry, she's going to talk about ways to use self-healing energy work to help us to calm down and to focus on improving our life. So welcome to the show, Rhonda Harris-Choudhry. Hi.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I'm originally from New York, now living in the gorgeous mountains of New Mexico, which I love. And I got into energy work probably in the 80s. What inspired a lot of my interest in alternative healing is my mom was very, very sick. She got sick when I was about 14. And I actually became her caregiver at that young age, raising my little sister who was 8 years younger than me because my dad had to work like 3 jobs to pay all her bills, her medical bills. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, she was misdiagnosed. Now, to be fair, we're going way back before CAT scans and all these other things that thankfully we have now. I think she was probably one of the first people who got a CAT scan when they were first made. And so we found out that, they said that she had, I can't think of what the name of it is now, where you might faint for no reason, but it actually turned out she had brain tumors. And because it was misdiagnosed for so long, the recovery, in fact, they only gave her a 10% chance of making it on the table. And then said that if she did make it, that she would probably just be basically a vegetable. And my mother was a woman of faith. And she said, no, I won't. I'll be just fine. And she was pretty much. I mean, of course, she still had a lot of challenges, but she was alive. She was mobile. Mm-hmm. And I also myself was misdiagnosed. I have Lyme disease, and I was misdiagnosed with other things and actually told I was crazy. And I was imagining the whole thing until they did a spinal tap and found out it was attacking my brain. So those were 2 really giant misdiagnoses in the Western traditional medical field that got me interested in learning about alternative medicine and alternative ways, things that can complement what the doctors are doing to help you, not take away, because I'm certainly not saying, stop seeing your doctor and just go see a Reiki practitioner. Sure. Energy work, alternative healing can work in harmony with Western medicine. And so I learned how to do Reiki. I took classes back in the 80s for that and studied, herbs and things my mother got me into, learning about herbs and things like that. And then I just kind of took it from there. And from a standpoint of anxiety, and obviously, taking over a household at 14, I lived a life of anxiety growing up. And then in the later years, after I was married and had my career and everything was great, I was in my 40s in 2005. And in a 6-month period, I unexpectedly lost my husband to liver cancer. He didn't know he had it. By the time he was diagnosed, he was gone literally in 2 weeks.
Wow.
After that, I was a mortgage underwriter, and we had the giant real estate market crash. I lost my career.
Mm-hmm.
And a month after my husband died, I went to the doctor with a stomach ache, and it turned out I had a 20-pound uterine tumor that I didn't know about because it didn't grow outward like I'd have this big lump. It
Mm-hmm.
grew inward and knocked my organs out of the way. And I was in pain because my organs had nowhere to go.
Oh.
And so the doctors told me I'm not going to make it. And I'm like, yeah, I'll make it. I'll be okay doing my own energy work and things like that. But I cannot tell you the anxiety that comes from, having major surgery, losing your husband, losing your career. And then I lost everything. I lost my house. I lost everything. And remaining calm actually helped me to start a business. I started my business 30 days from homelessness, literally. I was eating out of a food pantry. I was getting clothes from a clothes pantry. And I said, okay, 30 days, this is it. What am I going to do? And I had to calm down so that I could focus, because panic was doing everything it could to beat me up and keep me in that space. And so I had to fight back. And here I am today.
Wow, what a story. That's pretty amazing. And I can totally relate to a lot of what you said about things being misdiagnosed. I have friends that were diagnosed with MS, and it turns out it wasn't MS, it was Lyme disease.
Yes.
And, and it does, kind of disguise itself in many different ways. So when we talk about anxiety, especially as a child, 14, trying to keep a household together, what did you do at that point to deal with your anxiety? Because we know a lot of the kids today, they turn to drugs, they turn to things that just are very unhealthy for them because they can't handle the anxiety. So what did you do?
I think what helped me to handle the anxiety at that age was I had such a responsibility of getting up in the morning, making sure my mother was okay, getting my sister off to, I had so many things to do. I didn't have time to really focus too much. And I had to go to school, and I had to get my classes and my homework, and then walk home for school and get my sister and get her together. So I really didn't have a lot of time to dwell on being anxious and upset about things. However, when I did feel myself go into panic, what I would call panic attack mode, because what I would do is I would suppress everything I was feeling, because I was like, take care of my mom, take care of my sister, I take care of this, take care of that. But eventually all that stuff comes up and it's got to get out.
Sure.
And so when I would start to actually feel like that, I know this is going to sound like the craziest cure ever, but back in the olden days, we didn't have the internet and video games and all the cool stuff you guys had. We had cards. So
Right.
I would sit literally and I would play solitaire. And if it looked like I was going to win, I'd mess up the cards and I'd start again. Do something that's going to take your mind out of the moment to break that connection. Even if it's, say, your ABCs, do your multiplication table. I used to do my multiplication tables in my head to start disconnecting from the emotion, get back into a mental state, and then I was okay. Or if we were driving somewhere, I would count how many white trucks went by or things like that. I would get into more of the mental part instead of dwelling in the emotional part. Now, keep in mind, I was 14 years old, and my peers certainly didn't understand what I was going through. So I was really emotionally isolated because I didn't have anyone to talk to about these things. I didn't want to tell my mom because she was already upset. I wasn't going to add to her burdens.
Sure.
My sister was 8 years younger than me, and my dad was working 3 jobs. And so I dealt with it that way. And my escapism was also books at that age. I was a huge bookworm. I would just go into fantasy with my books of witches and wizards and all these different things. I was a huge Stephen King fan. You have to find something that's going to work those emotions out. Now, you can dance. I also love dancing. Dancing is one way to work out a lot of emotions. And depending on the song that you choose, the emotions of that song, like I like Pharrell's I'm So Happy, that song. I don't want to sing it and embarrass myself, but the song I'm So Happy.
Yep.
I love that song. Is when I hear the song, when you hear songs, the songs have those emotions in them and you can engage in those emotions, borrow them from the artist, so to speak. So when Pharrell is singing I'm so happy, then I start singing I'm so happy, and then I actually feel the words and I feel happy. So you can find songs that bring you comfort or peace or happiness and sing them. Get into the energy, because everything is about energy. That is what I've learned. You can live in the energy of crisis. You can live in the energy of depression. You can live in the energy of success. You can live in the energy of whatever energy you choose. And if you need a song to boost you into that, or a memory, which we'll talk about later, that's what you can do to help yourself. But get out of the emotion and back so that you can mentally focus and help your situation. And if you can find a peer to talk to, like I said, I was isolated at that age, but now you've got the internet. You can talk to people you can talk to your friend wherever your friends are right away. Find someone to talk to about it. Talk about it. You'll feel better.
Sure. And we know and I know firsthand with panic attacks, I used to have them quite a lot. And I know that really gets your adrenaline going and it gets your mind going, and then you kind of start freaking out. So what is the connection between anxiety and adrenaline addiction?
Okay, we've actually got so many adrenaline addicts walking around out there. First of all, I'm an adrenaline addict. And basically what that means, I know when people talk about adrenaline addiction, you think in terms of jumping out of an airplane or, playing chicken with a truck coming down the road, something crazy. But actually what adrenaline addiction is, it is when you have been exposed to a prolonged period of stress. What happens is whenever you're stressed out about something, your adrenaline kicks in. Your adrenaline is the fight or flight. Either something's up where you're going to fight back or you're going to run for it.
Right.
But there are lots of situations that you cannot fight back from or that you can't run from. When I was a child, and especially children, because if you have teenagers and such listening to this program, when you're a child and if you're under stressful situations at home, or you're dealing with a parent that's not the best parent in the world, when your adrenaline kicks in, the fight or flight, you're a child. You can do neither. You can't fight back. And where are you going to run to? And so that adrenaline literally has nowhere to go. If you're running, the adrenaline has a place to go. If you're fighting, the adrenaline has a place to go. If you're sitting still, you're not working it off, and then it kind of backs up on you. And then if you continue in that prolonged space, which I became an adrenaline addict when I was a kid from taking care of my family, then what happens is your body literally starts running on adrenaline, which is actually epinephrine and dopamine. And they can be very, very addictive substances. And so you start running on it. And so what'll happen is, because you're not aware of it, and I used to get back-to-back panic attacks, especially after I got the contracted Lyme disease, and it attacked my brain, it attacked my nervous system. And I was just completely constantly back-to-back panic attacks. And what happens is you think you're in an anxious state. You are. All of a sudden you could be watching TV, everything is fine, and then you get what I call the freight train coming feeling. And you feel the anxiety coming. In your mind, you're like, I'm sitting here, everything's okay. Why am I getting so anxious? Your heart starts pounding, and then you start getting more anxious because you're not confused because you don't know what's going on. But what really is actually happening here is your body saying, oh, hey, 3:00, time for my fix, whoosh. And it gives you a fix, your dosage of adrenaline, which feels like anxiety. And so you're like, oh my God, I'm having an anxiety attack, when your body is just really flooding itself with adrenaline because it's addicted to it. And so you have to wean off of the adrenaline like I did, doing the steps that I just when I felt the freight train coming, I would do my multiplication tables, say my ABCs, anything to break that mental connection. Look around your room for 5 round blue objects. Even if you think you don't have them, look for them anyway, just to break that connection and remind yourself, hey, you know what? I'm perfectly safe. Everything is fine. The house is quiet. The cat's chilled out. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And then break that connection. And then the more you do that, you will start to wean off and wean down and wean down. And the panic attacks will eventually stop, or at least be minimal, where they weren't what they were before, because now you're taking conscious control. You recognize that this is a physiological reaction, not an emotional thing. When we think in terms of panic, we think in terms of our emotions or being out of control emotionally, when actually it's just a physiological response of adrenaline flooding the body. Mm-hmm. And so if you take the emotion and the panic out of it and say, this is just a physiological response, my body's just flooding itself with adrenaline. Yes, it's annoying, but I'm fine. And then start to, like I said, say your ABCs or do something like that, you will find that you will start to wean off of that adrenaline and you will feel better.
Wow. Just a couple of years ago, I could be driving down the road and all of a sudden I'd feel these feelings. They'd start bubbling up. And I'm like, yep, having an anxiety attack, and I had to turn around. I'd have to go home because I'd be headed somewhere specifically and I'd have to turn around and go home. And it was the worst feeling in the world because I knew I was okay, but yet I knew I was letting people down because I wasn't showing up, and at the time when you're in that moment, it's hard to focus on anything else, especially when you're driving and you're supposed to be paying attention. So when you're driving down the road, how do you handle something like that?
When I'm driving down the road, I can still, in my head, I can still sing my ABCs. Mm-hmm. I can also count while I'm driving how many cars pass me, how many red cars are going by if I'm sitting at a light. I would say the worst is if you're going through a tunnel. I had a panic attack hit me as I was entering the Midtown Tunnel in New York. Just as I was going under, it hit. And, it's a 1-lane thing and you're like this. And it's dark, your lights are on. And I just started singing my ABCs. I was singing some nursery rhymes. I'm trying to remember what the name of one of them is. I sing a song of sixpence, pocket full of rye. I was like singing nursery rhymes in my head just to calm down and take off of that feeling of panic. Because once I engaged in that feeling of panic, it was all over.
Right.
It's all over once you engage. So it's just like, no, it's a panic attack. Start singing nursery rhymes. Who cares who hears you? Just sing, even if you're singing in your head, and break that connection, and you'll start to calm down, because that is a horrible feeling, panic attacks. And especially when they come out of nowhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. So how can people identify their source of their anxiety? Like me, I would be driving down the road and I was fine. I was going somewhere happy and I get the panic attack. I turn around, I go home and I sit and I think, I don't even know what caused it. So, how do people identify that source of anxiety?
Okay. So if you have been at some point in your life under a prolonged period of stress, then it's nothing necessarily has to trigger it. It could just be your body releasing that adrenaline out because it feels like it's time and it needs a fix. It needs that feeling of being like this. It's a lot of it is, think in terms of, I guess, a drug addict. Where, like, if you take speed, I don't know, is it called speed anymore?
I don't know.
Like in the older days, it was called speed, amphetamines. Even though that gets your heart racing, I would think it's an uncomfortable feeling because it does mimic the panic attack. Even though your body hates it, you still do it anyway because the body is addicted to it. Your body doesn't have a mind to say, you know what? Hey, knock it off. We're not going to do the panic attack. It's just like, oh, time for a panic attack or time for the adrenaline, and it gets it going. So there could be absolutely nothing that might trigger it. But what I will tell you that can trigger it is if you did not eat and your blood sugar drops. because that's a very similar feeling that you start to feel a little shaky. So that day, like if you were driving, do you remember if you ate anything or something like that? Or if you drank too much coffee? I had to give up the coffee. I was drinking like 2-3 pots of coffee a day, not because I was so exhausted I needed coffee, but because caffeine mimicked the feeling of the adrenaline that I was addicted to.
Okay.
And so I would drink the coffee because my body was trying to stay in that agitated state because that's what was normal to my body.
Right, right. And I actually cut back to 1 cup of coffee a day and no other caffeine throughout the day. And I always make sure that I eat breakfast. And, like this morning, 1 cup of coffee, ate breakfast on my way to, I'm a school nurse, on my way to a different school. And I felt those feelings coming up and I thought, oh, stop. You do this every day, just cut it out. And I did. I talked to myself the rest of the way there, which I'm sure was, it was somewhat helpful. But it's kind of like, why do these things keep happening when we know we're fine?
Because you know what, do you know what an empath is?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Just by virtue of the fact that you're a nurse and you're a healer and you're just trying to spread love and healing and light through the world, you are more than likely an empath. I don't know if you identify as such, but that's what empaths do. They want to, service empaths, because there are other forms that aren't so nice. But for the most part, they want to heal and help the world and spread love and make sure everyone is good. But with that comes, you also absorb the energies of other people. And so what you could be doing is subconsciously going into panic attack because you're going to see Susie, who may have new bruises on her from someone in her family hurting her, or whatever else is going on with the students that you work with. And especially if you're working with teenagers where their hormones are out of control, I've got a million things going on. You could be subconsciously like, oh no, I'm about to go into the den of anxiety and teenage hormones. And so I'm already getting nervous about that because I'm going to absorb this energy. It could be something just as simple as that, because children have a lot going on. You wouldn't think so, but they do. And you, as a nurse, you're talking to them. You're physically touching them. If you have to, you're absorbing all of that. And so it could just be a subconscious, get ready to walk into the lion's den of emotions and things that I can't control. And that could be what could be going on with you, especially if you're working with children. You may find that when you leave the day, you may be feeling exhausted if you are drained from the people that are also clinging to your energy that come to you for help as well.
Yes, absolutely. I work with elementary students right now, and it can change from day to day. But for right now, I'm in an elementary school, and yes, they do cling to you. Yes, they do drain you. And yes, it's tiring. So we're going to hold this thought. We're going to go to commercial break, and we'll be right back.
It's time for a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation. At Open Pages Publishing, we offer coaching, marketing packages, and other professional writing services such as a resume, articles, copywriting services, press releases, social media, and blog posting. For more information, email us at info@openpagespublishing.com. And now back to our show.
So we're back, and we're talking about going from just crazy anxiety to calm and peace of mind within seconds. My guest is Rhonda Harris-Choudhry, and we were kind of just going over, how you can be drained and how the panic attacks and anxiety set in and stuff. Rhonda, what I'd like to know is, so you gave us, examples of in the moment, how to address a panic attack, maybe start saying your ABCs or identify 5 different objects of the same shape or size or color. But how do you keep that focus and that calmness throughout the day?
Okay, so now you're going to get my super duper trick of how to calm yourself down literally within seconds. And you can actually do this several times a day if you need to do it. And so, what it is first, I'm going to explain the instructions and demonstrate it for you. And then I would like you to do it with me. Okay. First, the basis of this energy exercise is based on the fact that, like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, anxiety is a part of life. You're always going to be worried about something, your kids or whatever it is. You've always got something going on. And then when we have things like the pandemic or a crisis rears its head, then it's even worse. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, on a normal basis, our energies are always very scattered. We're thinking about our jobs, our kids, our spouses, our money challenges, our aging parents, whatever it is. You've got a million things going on. Your energy is spread out all over the place. And then when you get into crisis mode, like many people did with the pandemic, that just puts it on steroids, because now you're adding to it, the what ifs. What if I get this? What if I lose my job? What if? And the how can I do this? How am I going to do that? How am I going to? And so you've got all these energies that are spread out all over the place, and it can actually leave you off balance and shaky. And so what you have to do is you have to call your scattered energies back to center. And there's a very easy way to do it. Now, I know it's going to look strange, but I just want you to trust me and do this with me. But first, let me show you first, and then you can do it with me. So take your hand, doesn't matter which hand you use, and you're going to have your palm, in case people are listening to audio, I'll explain it. Have with your palm facing your hand. Place your index finger on one side of your temple and your thumb on the other side of your temple. And then what you're going to do is literally pull yourself together in the center. So you're going to have your thumb and your finger pressed together, leaving it here at the top of your forehead. And you're keeping your fingers touching the body, like you see I have like this. You're going to come down the front of your body in the center and repeat divine balance, 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 right down the center, balance, balance into the end of the groin, balance, 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 and balance. And then you just sit for a second. Okay, now do it with me. So again, your hands are facing, there you go. Come to the center, right in the center of your forehead. Bring your hands down and touching your body straight down the center. Repeat divine balance, 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 balance to the end of the groin, balance, balance, and balance. Sit for a second. There. How's that feel?
Interesting. Interesting. So how did you learn this?
So when you become an energy worker, you learn the traditional, the Reiki, things like that. But then you get creative and out of the box. And that just actually occurred to me one day. I'm like, I'm all over the place. I can't think. I need to bring myself back into balance. And I just did this. And I found that it worked when I did it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to share this with everybody.
Sure.
I believe that, the universe or God or the goddess, however you term the divine, sends me these things so that I can share them with other people, because it really does help to calm your energy down.
Okay. Now, do you have a private practice? Do you offer group energy work? How does your business work? Tell us about your business.
Okay. So people will come to me individually, and either they want me to cleanse their energy and get them into harmony and balance, or they want me to teach them how to do it themselves. My preference actually is I like to teach because I believe that we should be empowered. I believe that we all have healing gifts and abilities, and we can use them. They're ingrained within us. It's a part of our being. And we can use those energies to heal ourselves. Because I explain to people, especially people who are adrenaline addicts, or they're under a constant source of stress for whatever reason it is, unless you're independently wealthy, you can't afford to come see an energy worker 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
So by learning how to do it yourself, empowering yourself, A, you can handle it on your own, but B, you actually take, one of the things about anxiety and panic attacks is the feeling of helplessness.
Yeah.
And by taking control and fixing it yourself, it does a lot to boost your confidence. You feel better, you feel stronger, because it's like, oh, no worries, I can just slip in the bathroom and I can do this, or I can quickly light bulb up my child or something like that. That also helps to take away the anxiety and panic, because you're taking away the feeling of being helpless. And that's one of the biggest things that can make your panic attacks and anxiety worse.
Okay. So what are the main areas that you specialize in, and which one is your favorite?
My main area is that my favorite thing is I like working with empaths, because empaths typically have so much of other people's energies on them, but more importantly, they don't know how to get on their own priority list, because everyone is so much more important to them in their minds. I know, because I used to live with that same philosophy, that I had no right to complain because there were so many people who were worse off than me. And yes, while that is very true, that doesn't mean that I have to just live down in the dumps of poverty and despair just because I might have $1 more than somebody else.
Sure.
And putting everyone else on the priority list. Oh, I got to take care of this. I got to take care of this person, this and this and this. And then you turn around and your own life is in chaos because you've been trying so hard to work on someone else's stuff. Now, of course, there's a flip side to that, in that, especially if you are an adrenaline addict, like I said, you may look for ways to keep that feeling of adrenaline going. So when you're helping everyone else and your own life is in chaos, that can also trigger the adrenaline that you're addicted to. But that's who I like to work with the most, are the empaths, to teach them how to be empowered, to get on their own priority list and take control of their lives. And I also work heavily with people who have been sexually abused and assaulted, to remove the energies of their assailant from them.
Oh, okay. Okay. So as you've been talking, we've been showing your email address and your website. For those just listening, can you go ahead and tell those folks your email address and your website?
Sure. My email address is A like apple, Z like zebra, J like Jack, U, A like apple, 7 @gmail.com. And my website, if you just put in goddessrhonda.com, it'll redirect you to my website, my actual website, which anyone who's setting up a website for business, think about how long it is, because I use Healing Henna Goddess, and it was just it's really long, and some people don't know how to spell henna. So I just did a redirect to just put goddessrhonda.com, and it'll take you to my website.
Oh, good, good. Okay, so Rhonda, I also know that you wrote a book. Tell us about your book.
Yes, ma'am. I wrote a book called You Are Not Broken. And I wrote that book after I recovered from everything that happened to me. After my husband died, I lost my career. I lost pretty much, like I said, everything. Started my business, 30 Days from Homelessness. That was a very tough time for me. I mean, it was really hard. It's when you're in your 20s, you can handle a lot more. You can go and sleep on somebody's floor because, who cares? Nobody cares.
Sure.
When you've spent your life building your career and you have a beautiful home and you have all these great things and poof, they're gone just like that, rebuilding in your 40s is not that simple. Because
Right.
there's a lot more. First of all, you're really mad. Everything you've done is just like poof, gone. And plus, you're more tired when you're 20. You can work 5 jobs. When
Right.
you're in your 40s, who feels like it? And so I realized that a lot of the things that I was going through was also triggering memories of what it was like when I was growing up. Because once my mom got sick and we lost our income, she still owned a daycare. And then we went from having, a regular middle class life to being lucky if our lights were on. It was really that bad back then. And so that fear and seeing my father struggling to make the mortgage payments and keep the house out of foreclosure and do all that, it was a constant struggle for him. Watching him stressed out, it sort of brought those same feelings up of watching that. It's like, oh my God, my dad went through this. Now I'm going through this and I'm going to do this and blah, blah, blah. So sort of like a double kind of a whammy. And so there were certain steps that I had to take to get myself out of this and to pull myself out of the fear of being homeless. And one of the things was, and you can laugh at me if you like, but it is actually a sign of an empath. I wasn't so worried about myself. I was worried about my cat.
Oh,
who
Lord.
is going to feed my cat? How
Right.
will I take care of my cat if I'm homeless?
Sure.
So while it was harder for me to do something for myself because I'm an empath and everyone's so much more important than me, my cat, I've got to save my cat. I have to do whatever is necessary to save my cat. And so getting into that type of mindset really helped me. So I explained to a lot of people who are, in a panic, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, do it for your mom. Find someone that's going to inspire you to move forward in your life if you can't do it for yourself. That might say, well, why wouldn't you just, you're the one that wants to eat and you have a roof over your head. I'm talking, one of the things on my book says specific instructions for empaths is we don't think that in those kinds of terms. We don't think in terms of ourselves. We think in terms of how we can help and heal others. So thinking about my cats, and it's like, oh, I gotta save my cat, helped to get me into more of a focus on what to do. And then I started thinking about also my own subconscious training. I had to ask myself, did I get into this situation because I grew up in this situation? Now I'm just repeating a cycle. Maybe it made some sort of subconscious soul wound that I'm trying to experience. What's going on here? I had to figure out what was going on and look back. What was this all about? Why was I suffering with money? Why wasn't I things getting better? And a lot of it did go back to my childhood. With my parents were religious, not like uber religious, but we went to church on Sundays.
Sure.
And I remember a minister saying that it was easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to go to heaven.
Right.
And I heard that as a child. And that to me put a subconscious thing that, oh my God, if I have money, then I'm not going to go to heaven, or it's going to be harder for me to get to heaven. So I had to look at subconscious trainings that I had as a child, things like that. So my book will teach you how to go back and identify the source of where all of this began. Where did all of this come from? And then I also had to look at what emotional platform was I launching from, because I was getting up in the morning literally in a panic, with my heart in my mouth, okay, counting down the days. And I realized that getting up and launching my day on a platform of fear was not helping, because I was just doing everything fear-based.
Right.
And so what I started doing, which really helped me a lot, was instead of looking at the calendar and saying, where am I going to come up with this money? I started telling myself, you know what, for this minute, I'm okay. For this minute, I have a roof over my head. For this minute, I've got some food to eat. For this minute, I've got cat food for my cat. For this minute, I'm okay. And I literally started living in the okayness of the minute. And that helped me to calm down. And then eventually it was like, okay, for this hour, I'm safe. For this hour, I've got, you know, a little gas in the car if I need something. For this hour, my cat's okay. Right now, we're warm. And I would keep myself focused more on the minute and the hour, and I could do little things in that hour while I was feeling calm. When I was like, oh my goodness, the end is near, and what am I going to do? I was literally non-functional. But when I told myself, you know what, right now, everything's good. I've got a roof, I've got clothes, I've got food, my cat's okay. That would calm me down enough to help me to make another step forward in resolving my situation.
Right. Yeah. You know, and that is so true. We sit and, you know, we complain. But if you have even a car, you're richer than millions of people in the world because they don't have one. So when you stop and think, okay, wait a minute, I might be in a panic attack right now. But if we stop and focus on our wants, needs, and desires, our needs are met. If you have a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your stomach, even if it's a little bit of food, your needs are met and you're
That's
okay.
right. You're okay.
I think a lot of times people go to that wants and desires piece and think, oh my gosh, you know, what am I going to do? I'm a failure. I can't get there. What, you know, I've got to have this stuff. And it's really not a matter of having stuff to be okay. It's a matter of getting those basic needs fulfilled so that your internal everything is okay. You know, you don't have those panic attacks and you don't have those feelings of anxiety and, or, you know, wondering what people are thinking about you or talking about you. And, you know, that creates a huge piece of anxiety. I know when I was a young child, I was in second grade. I'll never forget it. I was in second grade, and that's when, and it's probably why I'm an empath. They were collecting cans of food at school. And I mean, we're talking a long time ago when I was in second grade, but they were collecting cans of food for the underprivileged kids. And we really didn't have extra to give. And it made me physically sick to my stomach. I was hospitalized because I was afraid those kids were going to starve.
Wow.
So, you know, I remember things like that, and it's tough. So I know when some of the silly anxiety comes up, it's like, come on, you're fine, you're good. But when you're in that moment of panic and anxiety, nobody can tell you you're fine and you're good.
Well, I have some other tricks that can also help to calm people down that I have used, because I do understand we do have a lot of empaths out there, you know, that have the subconscious, oh my, I can't be rich. I remember sitting in the pew of a church and they were talking about how Jesus died for our sins. I took that literally. Like, oh my God, I killed Jesus. It's all my fault. He's dead. Oh, no. So growing up with that, even a subconscious guilt, that was the baseline of my feeling guilty about everything and why I had to keep trying to do more and more for people to get over my guilt.
Okay.
Of that. So, you know, now there's plenty of people that are sitting in church right now that hear that same message and they're fine. Right. But I'm talking about my coping skills and my emotional situation where for me as an empath, I took those words like, OMG, this was my fault. I did this.
Right.
And so even traveling back into my head and realizing one of the reasons I couldn't say no to people and set the proper boundaries as an empath was because I had this feeling of guilt all the time, that it was subconscious.
Wow.
So my book is to help you to identify what emotional platforms you're launching from. What was it in your childhood? How to use your childhood to work for you. Because even in the worst of childhoods, when I tell people my story, like, OMG, how'd you survive all that? Some people would have done this, or some people would have done that,
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly look back and say, you know what? It is because I went through that I'm the strong woman that I am today.
Sure.
It's probably because of all that I was able to get out of my own situation when I was almost homeless. So technically, as hard as my childhood was, it was a boot camp that made me the strong, resilient, resourceful person that I am, and I'm grateful for it. So instead of like, oh, I hated my childhood and blah, 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 I'm literally grateful that I have the strength and the power because of what I went through. And when I look back on that time, because one of the things you should do is look back on a time when you did overcome something. When I look back at my childhood, then everything else seems like a piece of cake because I pulled that off as a kid.
Sure. Mm.
And so it's like, if I could do that at 14, get myself through school, get my sister through school, take care of my mom, and do all this stuff, what can't I do?
Right.
So I also pulled on that as well. Past successes to bring me into the energy of success, which is what I'm trying to get everyone into. The energy of success, the energy of good health, the energy of feeling good, because we can do that.
That's wonderful. And because of everything you went through, even as hard and as tough as it was, it prepared you to help others going through the same thing or maybe even worse things. So we are certainly thankful for that. So Rhonda, again, tell us where can we get your book and give us your contact information again.
Okay, you can get my book, You Are Not Broken. You can get it on Amazon, excuse me, and Barnes and Nobles. It's available. It's available in some Barnes and Nobles physical bookstores, so you have to call them. But otherwise, you can just order it from them. And please visit my website. Just go to goddessrhonda.com. It'll take you right to my website if you want to contact me, get on my mailing list, or learn more about ways I can help you out. I would love to do that because I'm all about empowering people to take control of their lives and to recognize that we have all the happiness that we need, all the strength and power right in here. Inside of ourselves, we just have to engage and bring it out and put away those external influences that are like this and live in your own energy of love, of peace, of compassion, of contentment, of healing, of joy.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Rhonda, for being on the show tonight. I appreciate it.
It was a true pleasure. Thank you for having me. Namaste.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, if you'd like to be a guest on my show or if you'd like to be a sponsor for the show, please reach out to me at info@openpagespublishing.com. This is Michelle. I'm reminding you to start today and live the life you were meant to live.